The world blinked and Prince Louis vanished. No more school appearances. No more waving from the royal balcony. No more innocent smiles photographed by the press. The 5-year-old who once charmed millions with his cheeky grins had disappeared behind palace walls without explanation. Catherine stood motionless in the corridor, tears streaming down her face. The test results clutched in her trembling hands told a story the palace would never allow the public to hear. Dr. Keisha Williams had delivered the news with clinical precision, but her voice cracked when she reached the final page. The official statement would mention routine health monitoring. It would not mention the neurological markers. It would not mention the progressive decline the medical team had been tracking for weeks. Most importantly, it would not mention that senior advisors knew long before Catherine ever saw that devastating report. Hi viewers, have you ever noticed how a child's laughter can suddenly stop, leaving behind a silence that terrifies you? Behind the golden gates of Kensington Palace, something had shifted. The boy who used to race through hallways now moved with careful, measured steps. His brothers noticed first, then the nannies, then the photographers who suddenly found their usual shots impossible to capture. Palace insider Jamal Thompson later admitted in confidence, the change wasn't gradual. One week Louis was climbing trees, the next week he couldn't hold a pencil properly. We all saw it, but nobody was allowed to talk about it. The medical appointments began in secret. Specialists arrived through back entrances. Files were marked with code names instead of royal titles. Dr. Williams ran test after test, each result more concerning than the last. When she finally requested a meeting with Catherine, 3 senior advisors attended uninvited. Catherine's world shattered that Tuesday afternoon. The diagnosis hit her like a physical blow, but what came next was worse. The palace machine immediately began calculating damage control while her son's future hung in the balance. But someone inside those ancient walls had decided the public deserved the truth. Before we dive deeper into what this devastating diagnosis means for the royal family and why the palace tried so desperately to bury it, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next. The clues were always there, hidden in plain sight. That final balcony appearance during the Platinum Jubilee wasn't the charming royal moment the press celebrated. Louis stood perfectly still, his usual animated gestures replaced by rigid posture. His eyes avoided the cameras that once delighted him. Body language expert Dr. Marcus Johnson later analyzed the footage. Prince Louis exhibited classic masking behaviors. The forced smile, the averted gaze, the way he kept his hands pressed against his sides. These weren't the actions of a tired child. This was someone struggling with basic motor control. Photographers noticed the restrictions first. Royal correspondent Shaniqua Davis received an unusual directive that summer. No close-up shots of Prince Louis. Wide angles only. When she questioned the request, her contact at Kensington Palace went silent for 3 days. The school absences followed a pattern. Stomach bug became the standard explanation. Then seasonal allergies. The excuses multiplied as Louis missed more days than he attended. Teachers at his private school were told to redirect any questions about his prolonged absences. One aide recalled Catherine departing a planning meeting abruptly. She received a call from the school nurse. Her face went white. She didn't come back that day or the next. The meeting was about Louis's upcoming public appearances. After that call, his calendar was quietly cleared. The final public photograph showed Louis at a family barbecue, his hand trembling as he reached for a juice box. The image was published once, then mysteriously pulled from all royal media channels. When journalists asked why, they were told it was a routine editorial decision. Royal nanny Destiny Brooks, who worked with the family for 2 years, later admitted, The changes started small. Difficulty with buttons. Problems with coordination. By autumn, we were helping him with tasks he'd mastered as a toddler. The family tried to keep it normal, but you could feel the worry in every room. Medical appointments increased from monthly to weekly. Dr. Williams began arriving at unconventional hours, always through the private entrance. Her usual cheerful demeanor grew increasingly grim with each visit. The pediatric neurologist wasn't the only specialist consulting on Lewis's case. A team of experts had been quietly assembled, their findings too alarming to ignore any longer. Dr. Williams requested an emergency family meeting on a gray October morning. Catherine arrived expecting routine updates. Instead, she found herself facing a room full of stern faces and classified medical reports. The routine developmental monitoring had revealed patterns that couldn't be dismissed or delayed. Lewis's motor skills were regressing at an alarming rate. His cognitive function remained sharp, making the physical decline even more heartbreaking to witness. Senior advisor Harrison Mitchell controlled the conversation from the moment Catherine entered. The diagnosis was manageable, he insisted. The treatment options were promising. Most importantly, the information was strictly confidential until further notice. Catherine listened in growing horror as her son's condition was reduced to talking points and media strategies. When she asked about specialist treatment centers, Mitchell redirected the conversation to maintaining stability and protecting the monarchy's reputation. Dr. Williams tried to explain the urgency of early intervention, but every medical recommendation was met with bureaucratic resistance. The palace wanted second opinions from their preferred physicians. They wanted time to assess the implications. They wanted everything except what Lewis needed most: immediate, aggressive treatment. The medical team had identified a rare neurological condition that required swift action. Every week of delay could mean permanent damage. But the palace operated on different timelines than human biology. Catherine's questions became demands. Her politeness turned to desperation. When she threatened to seek outside medical opinions, the room fell silent. Mitchell's response was swift and cold. Such decisions required consultation with senior family members and careful consideration of constitutional implications. That night, Catherine made 3 phone calls. None of them were to palace-approved physicians. The palace machine moved with ruthless efficiency once Catherine's intentions became clear. Her personal secretary, Tamara Johnson, received new instructions about coordinating all medical appointments through proper channels. Translation: Catherine's access to outside specialists had been quietly restricted. When Catherine attempted to schedule a consultation with a renowned pediatric neurologist in London, she discovered her requests were being reviewed by committees she'd never heard of. Forms that should have taken minutes to process sat on desks for weeks. Royal protocol demanded that all medical decisions involving direct heirs undergo institutional approval. What Catherine hadn't realized was how that protocol could be weaponized against a desperate mother trying to save her child. Private Secretary Benjamin Crawford delivered the message with bureaucratic precision. Her Royal Highness must understand that Prince Louis's condition requires careful management. Hasty decisions could have far-reaching consequences for the institution. Catherine's response was immediate and explosive. "My son is dying by degrees while you worry about headlines. Find me the best doctors in the world, or I will." The confrontation escalated when Catherine discovered that Dr. Williams's most recent reports had been classified above her security clearance. Her own son's medical records were being kept from her by a system that valued secrecy over his survival. Royal Communications Director Ashley Thompson attempted damage control. These protocols exist to protect the family. Premature disclosure could create panic and misinformation. But Catherine wasn't interested in protection that came at Lewis's expense. The breaking point came during a heated discussion about treatment options. When Catherine demanded immediate enrollment in an experimental therapy program, she was told such decisions required approval from higher authorities who hadn't looked into her son's eyes and seen the fear growing there. 3 advisors left that meeting with instructions to monitor Catherine's activities. Her phone calls were being logged. Her meetings were being reported. The institution had decided she was a bigger threat than the disease consuming her child. But Catherine had already made her decision. Catherine's phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m. The caller ID showed a blocked number, but the voice belonged to Dr. Kendra Washington, one of America's leading pediatric neurologists. Their conversation lasted exactly 4 minutes and 23 seconds before the line went dead. "I can help your son," Dr. Washington had whispered. "But we have 12 hours before they block this too." The palace security team discovered the breach at dawn. Catherine's encrypted communications had been monitored, her calls traced, her desperate attempt to save Lewis cataloged and reported. Head of Security Devin Carter presented the evidence to senior advisors with military precision. Within hours, Dr. Washington's visa application for entering the UK was mysteriously delayed. Her medical license came under sudden review by American authorities. The message was clear: help the princess, face the consequences. But Catherine had learned to play their game. Through her personal aide, Zara Phillips, she arranged a charity visit to a London children's hospital. The same hospital where Dr. Washington's colleague, Dr. Malik Johnson, happened to be conducting research. The meeting lasted 30 minutes in a supply closet between pediatric wards. Dr. Johnson examined photographs of Lewis, reviewed stolen copies of his medical records, and delivered a diagnosis that changed everything. "Your son doesn't have what they think he has," Dr. Johnson said quietly. "This condition is treatable, but only with immediate intervention. They're either incompetent or deliberately stalling." The revelation hit Catherine like lightning. Either the palace medical team had misdiagnosed her son, or they knew the truth and were allowing him to deteriorate for reasons she couldn't comprehend. Dr. Johnson handed her a small device before disappearing into the hospital corridors. "Use this once," he said. "It will give you answers they don't want you to have." That device would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of the monarchy. The USB drive contained medical records that shouldn't exist. Files dated weeks before Lewis's first symptoms appeared. Treatment protocols prepared months in advance. Correspondence between palace officials and physicians discussing managing the situation while a 5-year-old boy suffered. Catherine stared at her computer screen in the locked privacy of her personal study. Email after email revealed a calculated campaign to control Lewis's diagnosis, limit his treatment options, and prevent her from seeking outside help. Dr. Williams hadn't been treating Lewis. She had been monitoring his decline according to instructions from officials who viewed his condition as a political problem rather than a medical emergency. One email from Deputy Private Secretary Javon Matthews was particularly damning. "The princess must be kept from pursuing aggressive treatment until we determine the long-term implications for succession planning." They were using her son's illness to study its impact on royal bloodlines. They were treating Lewis like a laboratory specimen while she begged for his life. The most horrifying discovery came in a message thread between palace officials and genetic researchers. They wanted to understand whether Lewis's condition might affect other royal children. They were willing to let him deteriorate to gather data for future risk assessment. Catherine's hands shook as she read correspondence discussing acceptable loss scenarios and constitutional implications of impaired heirs. Her son wasn't a patient to these people. He was a case study. The final file contained video recordings from hidden cameras in Lewis's playroom. Footage of him struggling with simple tasks, falling repeatedly, crying in frustration when his body wouldn't obey his mind. Someone had been documenting his suffering for scientific analysis. But one detail in the correspondence changed everything. A reference to the Edinburgh precedent and how it had been successfully managed decades earlier. Catherine realized Lewis wasn't the first royal child to face this nightmare. The Edinburgh files were buried deeper than state secrets, but Catherine's newfound determination proved stronger than palace security. Through contacts developed during her charity work, she connected with retired royal physician Dr. Amara Thompson, who had served the family 40 years earlier. Dr. Thompson agreed to meet at a private clinic outside London. The elderly physician arrived carrying a leather briefcase that hadn't been opened in decades. Inside were medical records, photographs, and documentation of a cover-up that predated Catherine by generations. Prince Edward's youngest son, Dr. Thompson explained quietly. Same condition as Lewis. Same symptoms. Same deliberate delays in treatment. The photographs showed a young royal child whose decline mirrored Lewis's progression exactly. The medical notes revealed effective treatments that were never implemented. Most shocking were the communications proving that senior royals had knowingly allowed the child to suffer to protect institutional interests. They let him die, Dr. Thompson said simply. Not from the disease, but from neglect disguised as protocol. They studied him instead of saving him. The conspiracy ran deeper than Catherine had imagined. Multiple royal children over decades had faced similar conditions. Some were treated successfully when their parents fought the system. Others became casualties when parents trusted institutional guidance over parental instinct. Dr. Thompson handed Catherine a list of international specialists who had been blacklisted from treating royal patients. These doctors could save Lewis tomorrow, she said. But the palace has made sure they'll never get the chance. The evidence was overwhelming. The pattern was clear. The monarchy had systematically sacrificed sick children to protect its image and study genetic implications of royal bloodlines. But Dr. Thompson saved the most shocking revelation for last. She opened a sealed envelope and removed a single photograph showing a healthy child playing in a garden. This was taken 3 months after we ignored palace orders and treated him anyway. Dr. Thompson smiled. Some battles are worth fighting, even against kings and queens. The child in the photograph was now a healthy adult, living quietly away from royal duties but alive because one physician chose medicine over politics. Catherine's war against the palace machine began at dawn on a Tuesday morning. Armed with evidence that could topple governments, she walked into Kensington Palace and delivered an ultimatum that would change royal history forever. The emergency meeting included King Charles, senior advisors, and legal representatives who had been summoned with 90 minutes' notice. Catherine placed the leaked medical files, correspondence, and video evidence on the conference table like weapons of mass destruction. You have been conducting medical experiments on my son while denying him life-saving treatment, she announced to the stunned room. This ends now, or the world learns everything. The silence lasted exactly 47 seconds. Then chaos erupted as advisors scrambled to contain a scandal that could destroy the monarchy's reputation for generations. Private Secretary Harrison Mitchell attempted damage control. Your Royal Highness must understand the complexity of constitutional implications. Catherine's response was swift and devastating. My son will receive treatment from Dr. Malik Johnson starting tomorrow, or these files go public tonight. King Charles had remained silent throughout Catherine's presentation, but his face revealed the weight of decisions made in his name. When he finally spoke, his words carried the authority of centuries. The boy will receive whatever treatment his mother deems necessary. The institutional resistance crumbled in minutes. Phone calls were made to unlock blocked visa applications. Medical restrictions were lifted. Research protocols that had prevented Lewis from receiving care were immediately terminated. But Catherine wasn't finished. She demanded the resignation of every official who had participated in delaying Lewis's treatment. She wanted criminal investigations into the deaths of previous royal children who had been denied care. Most importantly, she wanted guarantees that no future royal child would face similar medical manipulation. The demands were met without negotiation. The evidence Catherine possessed was too damaging to risk public exposure. Dr. Malik Johnson arrived in London 36 hours later. His first examination of Lewis lasted 4 hours and confirmed what parents worldwide instinctively know. Maternal instinct is often more accurate than institutional expertise. The treatment plan was aggressive, immediate, and remarkably effective. 6 months after Catherine's declaration of war against the palace medical establishment, Prince Louis scored his first goal in a neighborhood soccer match. The crowd of local children cheered as he raised his arms in victory. His coordination fully restored and his future unlimited. The transformation had been remarkable but not miraculous. Dr. Johnson's treatment protocol, combined with therapies that had been available all along, reversed most of Lewis's symptoms within weeks. The child who had struggled to hold a pencil was now climbing trees again. Catherine watched from the sidelines, tears streaming down her face as her son celebrated with friends who knew nothing about royal titles or constitutional implications. They saw him simply as Louis, the boy who could finally keep up during playground games. The palace never issued public statements about Lewis's condition or recovery. The official narrative remained routine developmental monitoring that had concluded successfully. But behind palace walls, fundamental changes had taken place. New protocols now prevented institutional interference in royal medical decisions. Parent consent became paramount over constitutional concerns. The physicians who had participated in delaying Lewis's care found themselves reassigned to positions far from Kensington Palace. Dr. Williams quietly resigned and moved to private practice. Dr. Johnson accepted a permanent consulting position with royal medical staff. The files documenting decades of medical manipulation were sealed but preserved for historical record. Most importantly, Catherine had established legal precedent that no future royal parent would face similar battles. Her fight had protected not just Louis, but generations of royal children who might face medical challenges. The boy who ran across that soccer field represented more than royal recovery. He embodied proof that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty to an institution is forcing it to change. As Louis celebrated with his teammates, Catherine smiled knowing she had won the only battle that truly mattered. The fight for her child's life against a system that viewed him as expendable. The scars would remain, but her son was free to write his own future. What happens when institutions prioritize image over innocent lives? This story shows how one mother's refusal to accept protocol over parental instinct changed everything. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories that inspire courage in impossible situations. Share your thoughts in the comments and inspire others who might be fighting similar battles. Sometimes the greatest victories come from refusing to accept what powerful people call inevitable.